This podcast centers its focus on the area of memory and adolescence, paying particular attention to memory. But what is memory? Memory involves storing and retrieving information and experiences. However, Father Dougal Maguire from Father Ted seems to have awful trouble with his memory.
Sister Assumpta! Hello, Dougal, do you remember Sister Assumpta? No. She was here last year, and then we stayed with her in the convent back in Kildare. Do you remember it? You do. And then you were hit by the car when you went down to the shops for the paper. You must remember all that. And then you won £100 with your lottery card. You must remember it, Dougal.
And weren't you accidentally arrested for shoplifting? I remember we had to go down to the police station to get you. And the police station went on fire? And you had to be rescued by helicopter?
Do you remember? We can't remember any of that. Huh? The helicopter! When you fell out of the helicopter. Over the zoo. Do you remember the tigers? You don't remember? You were wearing your blue jumper. Sister Assumpta, hello there.
Memory can be divided up into three main parts. These parts consist of sensory memory, short-term working memory, and long-term memory. As students, the ability to be able to recall information is very important, and using all our senses in this process is fundamental. Firstly, let's look at short-term memory and working memory with Professor William O'Connor from the University of Limerick.
My name is Billy O'Connor. I'm Professor of Physiology in the Graduate Entry Medical School here in the University of Limerick. And I'm going to talk to you about memory. What we discovered is that short-term memory is where neurons make and break connections in the hippocampus. And that short-term memory is usually for up to 7 items at a time. But you can do all sorts of tricks. You can clunk memory, you can clunk it. So for instance, like telephone numbers, you often say, if it's a long telephone, you always say the number is 123 456 7890. So what you've done there is you've clumped 10 items into 3 separate batches. So you can clunk up to 4 items and therefore have 4 groups of items and therefore remember a lot more than just 7 individual items. So there are lots of tricks, but that's all done in the hippocampus.
Working memory. Working memory is a system or systems involved in the temporary storage of information in the performance of such cognitive skills, such as reasoning, learning and comprehension. There are 3 types of working memory. Firstly, the central executive. This controls attention and other mental resources referred to as the worker of working memory. Secondly, the phonological loop or store, which holds verbal or acoustical information. Baddeley 2001 suggests that we can hold as much in the phonological loop as we can rehearse in 1.5 to 2 seconds. Thirdly, the visuospatial sketchpad, which is the area that holds an image temporarily.
The more senses you deploy when you're learning something, the more it's embedded in the brain. And key for you, the easier it is to recall it. So if you're going to learn about something, touch, taste, smell, hearing, and seeing are the 5 senses. Try to deploy the 5 senses you want to learn about something, and that'll embed it deeper in your brain, in your hippocampus for your short-term memory, and then off into your long-term memory. It'll code it more richly so that it can be retrieved by any one of the senses. While if you just learn text in a book, then you're relying on vision and vision alone. But if you can somehow associate a smell with that, or a sound, or a texture, or a taste, then you'll be able to recall it much quicker. So the more senses that are used in embedding a memory, the better. There's a theory called the 3-hit theory of memory, and that is if you encounter something, so that's 1 hit, and you find it interesting, you'd like to remember it. So what you do is you think about it again. That's 2 hits, an hour or 2 later. Then, crucially, you must sleep, and it must be good quality sleep. And then the following day, you must revisit it again. That's the 3rd hit. So 2 hits near each other. First is the encounter, then is to remember, then sleep, and then a hit the following day, that would embed the short-term memory into long-term memory. It's called the 3-hit theory of memory.
Long-term memory. Long-term memory consists of implicit and explicit memory. Explicit memory is knowledge that can be recalled from our long-term memory and consciously considered. For example, your date of birth. Implicit memory is knowledge that we are not conscious of recalling, but influences our behavior or thought. For example, a phobia of small spaces. Semantic memory is also part of explicit memory. Semantic memory consists of propositions which deals with the meaning of words stored in the long-term memory. Images also deals with representations based on physical attributes, and schemas deals with both images and propositions. Implicit memory makes up the other half of long-term memory. This consists of classical conditioning. These are out-of-awareness memories that cause us to feel anxious, for example the noise of a dentist drill. Procedural memory. This is for skills and habits, for example riding a bike. Productions. This specifies what to do in certain conditions.
Retrieval and forgetting. There are two components of this, the first being interference analysis, where forgetting is the result of events that occurs during this interval, and the more events that occur, the greater the interference. The second is decay analysis, where forgetting is caused simply by the passage of time. Jenkins and Dallenbach devised a test to determine the effects of interference on retrieval. In the first phase of their experiment, 2 participants memorized a list of nonsense syllables. Then, after a delay of between 1 and 8 hours, they tried to recall those syllables. In one condition, they remained awake, and in the other, they went to sleep straight after. They found that participants could recall approximately 5 syllables when they had slept during the retention interval, whereas they could recall only 1 when they had been awake. Jenkins and Dallenbach's results suggest that interference plays an important cause of forgetting.
During the early part of adolescence, a part of the brain called the hippocampus shows increased volume in grey and white matter. The few studies that have examined the hippocampus found increased volume and increasing myelination from childhood to adulthood. This part of the brain is responsible for memory and attention. Animal studies have shown greater sensitivity to the effects of alcohol on spatial working memory during adolescence. Brain response during spatial working memory is abnormal in adolescents with alcohol use disorders. Heavy alcohol use is associated with poor verbal retrieval, poor attention, and poor visuospatial functioning. Heavy alcohol use affects hippocampal functioning, and animal studies have shown that it can cause hippocampal asymmetry. Typical asymmetry is theorized to contribute to functional differences in memory. Abnormal hippocampal asymmetry has been associated with conditions such as Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, psychopathy, and violent offending.
If you want to improve your memory, think back to Professor William O'Connor's advice on the 3-hit theory of memory. This can enhance the movement of information from short-term to long-term memory. We thank you for watching.